Imagine if I told you that to become a top-tier performer in your field, you literally need to shrink your brain cells by 60% every single night.
Yeah, that's a pretty startling visual to start with.
Right. But I mean, if you don't physically reduce the size of the neurons inside your skull, you're actively drowning your cognitive bandwidth in this, like, pool of toxic metabolic waste.
Which nobody wants.
Exactly. You are basically guaranteeing brain fog, a shortened attention span, and just, completely compromised decision-making for the entire next day.
It's the biological reality of elite productivity. And it's so wild because we spend so much time talking about adding things to our routine.
Right, totally. Like more coffee, more apps.
Yeah, more life hacks. But the actual foundation of sustained genius relies on this automated biological cleaning process that we just constantly interrupt.
We really do. And that biological reality is exactly what we are deconstructing today. Welcome to today's deep dive, and honestly, it is an absolute monster of a topic.
It really is. We are working through a massive stack of notes and biological research today.
Yes, all drawn from Robin Sharma's book, The 5 a.m. Club. And, on the surface, people hear that title and they think, oh, great, another self-help book telling me to wake up early and just hustle harder.
Right, the classic hustle culture trap.
Exactly. But our mission today is to completely dismantle that assumption. We're here to extract the really hard-hitting practical frameworks hidden inside it.
Because the underlying premise is actually profound.
It is. What if the single biggest difference between, like, a legendary producer and an average worker isn't innate genetic talent at all? What if it's dictated by the biological states they engineer while the rest of the world is just fast asleep?
That's the core of it. We constantly attribute extraordinary success to this mystical inherited genius.
Like they were just born with it.
Right. We see the final result, the brilliant novel, the dominant business, or, the staggering athletic achievement, and we just assume they have a special processor in their brain.
Yeah, a biological unfair advantage.
Exactly. But the reality is that gargantuan results are engineered. They are built on very specific biological and psychological blueprints.
And our goal today is to give you, the listener, a step-by-step methodology to basically reclaim your cognitive bandwidth from a world that is fundamentally designed to steal it from you.
Which is a bold promise, but the frameworks absolutely support it.
They do. And what makes this source material so unique and honestly kind of wild is how it actually delivers those blueprints. It's framed as an allegorical story.
Yeah, it's not a textbook.
Not at all. So you've got this burned out tech entrepreneur. She's just been blindsided by a hostile takeover of her own company. Investors are trying to force her out. And she is, genuinely contemplating taking her own life.
She's at absolute rock bottom.
Yeah. And she ends up meeting this frustrated, self-sabotaging artist at a personal optimization conference.
Which is led by a legendary guru known as the Spellbinder.
Right. And long story short, the entrepreneur and the artist are taken under the wing of this incredibly quirky, homeless-looking billionaire named Stone Riley.
Which is just a brilliant narrative device, honestly.
Oh, for sure.
By using these archetypes, the stressed executive, the distracted creative, and the eccentric mentor, the text grounds some extremely dense neurobiology in relatable human struggles.
It makes it so much easier to digest. Because the billionaire mentor does these bizarre things, like he sleeps in his workout clothes just to force himself out of bed. Or he'll wildly twirl around on a beach in Mauritius just to demonstrate joy.
Right. It's strange, but it makes these really complex productivity models incredibly memorable.
Exactly. But okay, before we even get into alarms and sleep cycles, we have to understand the philosophical baseline here. We need to understand how the masters think differently from the masses.
And Sharma frames this as a fundamental shift from superficiality to granularity.
Let's unpack that, because the modern worker is suffering from, a literal epidemic of superficiality.
Oh, absolutely. Sharma paints a really vivid picture of this. He refers to people operating in the modern distraction economy as cyber zombies.
Cyber zombies. I love that.
It's so accurate. Think about the average workday for you. You're writing an email, checking a Slack message, glancing at a news alert on your phone, and, half listening to a Zoom call.
All at the exact same time.
Right. You are doing a lot of things, but you're doing them all poorly. This fractured attention just leads to vague, imprecise thinking.
And vague, imprecise thinking yields vague, imprecise results.
Exactly. Elite performers Conversely, they practice granularity. They operate under this profound, almost obsessive insistence on greatness in the details.
And the roadmap for this in the text is called the three-step success formula. It sounds simple on paper. It goes like this. Better awareness leads to better choices, which inevitably leads to better results.
But we really need to dig into that first step, awareness.
Yeah, because it's not just noticing things.
No, it's much deeper. When you elevate your awareness of the microscopic details of your craft, you suddenly see massive opportunities for improvement that the average distracted person is completely blind to.
Because the average person is functionally blind to nuance.
Right. If you only look at the surface of a pond, you don't see the ecosystem underneath. Awareness requires pausing, focusing, and dedicating real cognitive resources to observation.
The billionaire mentor gives two examples of this granularity that just blew my mind. The first one is a Formula One pit crew.
Oh, this is a great example.
It's so intense. So he talks about hanging out with an F1 team and watching them rigorously sweep and literally industrial vacuum their pit area immediately after a tire change.
Like down on their hands and knees.
Yes, looking for microscopic specks of dust. And they do this because if even a single molecule of dirt gets into the race machine's engine or, interferes with a lug nut, it could cost them a multi-million-dollar race.
Or even worse, at those speeds, it could cost a driver's life.
Exactly. That is true granular focus. The stakes demand it.
And that level of granularity requires a total abandonment of superficiality.
Right.
I mean, you cannot be checking your phone while ensuring an F1 car is secure. It demands absolute presence.
Yeah, for sure. And the second example brings it down to something way more everyday, but I think it's equally profound. He talks about the CEO of Montclair, the high-end Italian fashion company.
Oh, the spaghetti pomodoro story.
Yes. So someone asked this incredibly wealthy, highly successful CEO what his favorite food was, expecting some extravagant Michelin star answer.
Naturally.
And he said spaghetti pomodoro. It is literally just pasta, fresh tomatoes, olive oil, and basil. It's the simplest dish imaginable.
But the CEO points out that getting the calibration absolutely correct, the exact acidity of the tomatoes, the precise temperature of the oil, the perfectly timed al dente pasta, it requires unyielding precision and uncommon prowess.
The magic isn't in the complexity. It's in the granular mastery of the simple elements. But okay, let's look at that practically for a second. Isn't obsessing over the exact calibration of olive oil and tomatoes the exact kind of micromanagement that drives a team totally crazy?
That is a very valid concern.
Like, if I'm leading a marketing team and I demand that level of granularity on every single font choice or comma in an internal memo, I'm going to be an insufferable perfectionist.
Yeah.
Where is the line between granularity and toxic micromanagement?
That is the exact trap, and it's something Sharma explicitly addresses. He refers to this as the dark side of genius.
Oh.
Think about the historical virtuosos, the Michelangelos, the Steve Jobs of the world.
Right.
The exact traits that made them true masters at their craft, the obsessive attention to detail, the willingness to isolate themselves for long stretches, their absolute refusal to compromise on quality, well, it often made them terribly unbalanced.
And difficult to work with, right?
Very difficult, emotionally volatile in their personal lives, too.
Yeah, you hear those horror stories of directors demanding 100 takes for a 2-second shot.
Yeah.
It just destroys the people around them.
Exactly. The goal here is not toxic perfectionism across every single mundane aspect of your existence. The philosophy advocates for calibrated rigor.
Calibrated rigor?
Yeah.
What does that look like in practice?
It means you apply granularity exclusively to your primary assets of genius rather than obsessing over things that just don't matter.
Okay, so picking your battles.
Precisely. If you are a surgeon, you must be granular about your sterilization process and your incisions.
I hope so.
Right. But you do not need to be granular about folding your laundry at home. If you lead a marketing team, you are granular about the core messaging and the psychological impact of the campaign.
Not necessarily the formatting of an internal HR memo.
Exactly. You have to allocate your obsessive focus to the areas that actually move the needle and practice what he calls strategic neglect on the rest.
Okay, that makes sense. So if we accept that we need to apply this calibrated granularity to our most important work, the obvious next question is, how do we structure our lives to actually do that?
How do we direct that focus?
Yeah, exactly. And Sharma transitions from this overarching mindset into 4 specific areas where elite producers spend their energy. He calls them the 4 focuses of history makers.
And this is where the biological engineering really begins to take shape. The first focus is capitalization IQ.
Capitalization IQ.
Yes, this is the concept that actualizing your potential is far more important than your innate talent. It completely upends the talent myth we talked about earlier.
Right. Grit beats giftedness. It reminds me of the research around myelination in the brain.
Oh, that's a perfect connection.
Yeah, how practicing a skill literally wraps your neural pathways in myelin, making the signal travel faster. You aren't born with thick myelin sheaths for playing the cello or writing Python code. You build them through relentless granular repetition.
Precisely. Talent is merely a starting line. Capitalization IQ is how far you run.
Got it.
The second focus is freedom from distraction, and honestly, this is the absolute core of the 5 a.m. philosophy. To understand why waking up at 5 a.m. is so powerful, we really have to look at the neurobiology of the state called transient hypofrontality.
I love this concept. Let's break this down because it sounds like a medical condition, but it's actually a superpower.
It does sound clinical, doesn't it? Let's dissect the term. Transient means temporary. Hypo means less or under. And frontality refers to the prefrontal cortex of your brain.
Okay, wait, the prefrontal cortex, that's the part right behind the forehead, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the evolutionary newer part of the brain. It is responsible for executive function, logic, planning, worrying, analyzing, and stressing over your schedule.
So it's the part of your brain that tells you to be anxious about an upcoming meeting or makes you feel guilty about a mistake you made 5 years ago.
It's the inner critic. It's that voice that constantly chatters and judges.
Okay, so what happens to it at 5 a.m.?
Well, when you wake up before dawn, around 5 a.m., the prefrontal cortex is effectively still asleep. It temporarily shuts down.
Wow.
It's the quiet and isolation of the early morning, away from the overstimulation of emails and news cycles. It literally starves that analytical brain of inputs because it has nothing to react to. It just goes offline. This is transient hypofrontality.
So the inner critic is literally unconscious.
Yes. And when that happens, your brain waves shift. During the day, when you are stressed and working, you are in beta waves, fast, erratic, alert.
The typical workday state.
Right. But in the quiet of 5 a.m., your brain drops into alpha waves, which are relaxed and calm. And it can even dip into theta waves, which are associated with deep insight and flow.
It's incredible.
But by waking up at 5 a.m., you literally unlock a biological state of pure, uninhibited genius because the doubting, overthinking part of your mind cannot interfere.
Yeah.
You are accessing the deeper, more creative parts of your brain without the friction of anxiety.
Okay, hearing that the prefrontal cortex shuts down makes total biological sense, but I have to admit, when my alarm goes off at 4:45 a.m., I am not thinking about accessing pure genius or riding my theta waves.
No, probably not.
I'm just thinking about how incredibly cold the floor is and how much I want to pull the blankets back over my head. Like, the biology is amazing, but bridging the gap between theory and reality is really tough.
Which is exactly why the environment and the routine you build around that wake-up time are so critical. And we will definitely get into the exact mechanics of that routine shortly.
Good, because I need it.
But let's look at what you do with that transient hypofrontality once you actually secure it. This leads to the third focus, personal mastery practice.
Right, the relentless dedication to self-improvement. Sharma introduces this fantastic metaphor here called traffic university.
Oh, I really like this concept.
Yeah, the idea is that history makers leverage the mundane dead time in their lives. If they are commuting, waiting in line at the grocery store, or doing chores, they aren't just zoning out to mindless radio or staring at social media.
They're enrolled in Traffic University.
Exactly. They are listening to audiobooks, absorbing educational content, and actively studying their craft.
It is about recognizing the compounding value of information. Sharma argues that even a single transformative idea extracted from a book or a course can yield a massive return, both financially and emotionally.
Like finding one good idea can change everything.
Right. If you spend an hour a day in your car, that is hundreds of hours a year. You could effectively complete the equivalent of a university degree simply by repurposing your commute.
And that flows directly into the fourth focus,
Yeah.
day stacking, which is this concept that small, seemingly insignificant daily wins compound over time into staggering results.
But people get this wrong all the time.
Let me play devil's advocate here, actually. If I'm constantly stacking days, trying to capitalize on my IQ in every single moment, and turning my relaxing drive home into a mandatory university lecture, aren't I just treating myself like a machine?
It can feel that way.
Like, I know people who try to optimize every single minute of their existence, and they are usually the most miserable, tightly wound people in the room. It just sounds like an endless exhausting grind where you never just get to exist.
It's a vital critique and a very common misinterpretation of what day stacking truly means.
Okay, how so?
Sharma is vehemently against the linear industrial age mindset of just grinding harder to produce more. Day stacking isn't about relentless 24/7 hustle. It is about incremental evolution.
Unpack that for me. What is the actual difference between hustle and incremental evolution?
Hustle culture demands massive, exhaustive effort every day, usually leading straight to burnout. Day stacking is about committing to just a 1% improvement.
Just 1%.
Yes. Tiny, almost imperceptible optimizations. Today, you read 10 pages of a book. Tomorrow, you try to focus for an extra 5 minutes before checking your phone. It is consistency over intensity. The billionaire mentor uses a phrase, "A bad day for the ego is a great day for the soul."
Meaning what exactly?
Well, when you face a setback or when you are doing the tedious, unglamorous work of building a new habit, it bruises the ego.
Because you aren't amazing at it immediately.
Right. The ego wants immediate applause and massive leaps. But that quiet discomfort, the willingness to show up and do the small 1% improvement, even when it feels totally insignificant, is exactly what facilitates long-term growth. Day stacking is an exercise in patience, not a mandate for exhaustion.
But let's be honest, we all know people who try to day stack and optimize their commute. They aim for that 1% improvement, but they still end up miserable, burned out, and plateaued a month later.
Oh, absolutely.
And why does that happen? It happens because they are applying a productivity hack to a fundamentally broken foundation. You can't outwork emotional trauma.
No, you cannot.
You can't life hack your way out of deep-seated resentment. And this is where Sharma introduces, honestly, my favorite concept in the entire text, the 4 interior empires.
This is a profound shift from traditional self-help. For decades, the personal development industry has obsessively focused on just having a good mindset.
Yes. The message is always think positive, visualize success, change your mindset.
Just smile in the mirror and your problems will vanish.
Exactly. But Sharma argues that mindset, your psychology, and your intellectual beliefs is only 25% of the equation.
Right. If you only focus on mindset, you are building a house on a quarter of a foundation. To achieve true mastery, you have to cultivate the other 3 empires: heart set, health set, and soul set.
Let's break these down, starting with heart set, because I think this is where so many ambitious people crash and burn. Heart set is your emotionality. It is the realm of your feelings, your past traumas, and your unexpressed pain.
You can read every business book ever written, and you can possess the most finely tuned, optimistic mindset in the world. But if your heart set is weighed down by toxic emotional residue anger at a former business partner, deep-seated insecurity, or unhealed grief, your intellectual intentions will constantly be sabotaged by your emotional reality.
It's like having a Ferrari engine, but the parking brake is permanently rusted in place.
Precisely. Toxic feelings that are not processed do not just disappear. They become a heavy psychological anchor. You cannot produce world-class creative work if your emotional core is suffocating.
And the allegory of the book illustrates this perfectly with the entrepreneur character. On paper, her mindset is flawless. She is a highly successful, dominant tech CEO. She built a massive company from scratch.
But just struggling.
But we quickly learn that she is secretly miserable and completely hollow inside. As the story unfolds, we find out she is suffering from what Sharma calls fatherless daughter syndrome.
Right.
She lost her father at a very young age, which created this massive subconscious fear of abandonment and a desperate need for external validation.
And how does that actually manifest in her behavior day to day?
Well, she drives herself to the point of absolute physical and mental exhaustion. She relentlessly chases wealth, industry dominance, and the approval of her peers, desperately trying to fill the emotional void left by her father's death.
So she's trying to solve an emotional problem with intellectual and financial tools.
Exactly. It is the textbook definition of a strong, capable mindset, completely hijacked by a broken heart set, and it is literally destroying her. It almost drives her to suicide before she goes to that conference.
That narrative really highlights the danger of ignoring the heart set. And right alongside that is the health set.
The physical piece.
Yes, this represents your physiology. It's the brutal reality that you cannot be a titan of industry or a present parent or a creative genius if you are dead or chronically ill or constantly exhausted. Health set is about optimizing your physical vitality so you actually have the energy to execute the ideas your mindset generates.
Which leads to the 4th empire, soul set. And I think in our hyper-connected modern world, this is the one that is the most starved.
Without question. We spend our days constantly feeding our egos. We look for validation in social media likes and job titles and the clothes we wear and the bank balances we obsess over.
It's nonstop.
All of that feeds the mindset and the ego, but the soul set represents your true heroic nature. It is your spirituality, your inner peace, your connection to something greater than yourself, and the legacy you want to leave behind.
The ego is loud, but the soul is quiet.
Beautifully put. And because the soul is quiet, it gets drowned out by the noise of modern life. Sharma argues that escaping the distraction of the world to sit in pure silence is the only way to reconnect with that soul set.
Right.
If you do not dedicate time to silence, you will spend your entire life climbing a ladder only to realize at the end that it was leaning against the wrong wall.
Okay, so we have the philosophy down. We understand transient hypofrontality. We know we need to balance mindset, heart set, health set, and soul set. But what does this actually mean for you, the listener, tomorrow morning?
The practical application.
Exactly. How do you practically build these 4 interior empires? Sharma says you do it during the victory hour, which is the hour between 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. And this brings us to the absolute core engine of the entire methodology, the 20-20-20 formula.
Yes. The 20-20-20 formula is a highly structured protocol that breaks that 60-minute victory hour into 3 distinct 20-minute pockets. It is not about just waking up early and aimlessly drinking coffee while scrolling through the news.
No, it is a biological intervention. Let's dissect the first pocket. From 5:00 a.m. to 5:20 a.m., the mandate is simple. Move.
Move.
But this isn't a gentle stretch or like a leisurely walk. The protocol demands intense, sweaty exercise. Why is the sweat so critical?
The neurobiology here is fascinating. When you wake up, your body is naturally flooded with cortisol.
The stress hormone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cortisol is responsible for stress, fear, and alertness. It originates in your adrenal glands, and it's what gives you that tight chest feeling when you're anxious. An excess of cortisol literally blocks your brain's ability to think creatively.
It puts you in survival mode, fight or flight.
Right. You can't be creative when you're running from a tiger. Sweating through intense physical exertion first thing in the morning acts as a biological purge. It significantly reduces those cortisol levels, clearing the stress out of your bloodstream.
That makes a lot of sense.
Simultaneously, the exertion triggers a massive release of dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter of drive, motivation, and reward, and serotonin, which regulates happiness and calm.
So you are literally manufacturing a chemical cocktail of motivation.
Yes, but there is an even deeper mechanism at play here. Intense morning exercise promotes the release of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor.
Okay, wait, explain, like I'm 5-time bad. What is BDNF and why do I want it in my brain?
Think of BDNF as Miracle-Gro for your brain.
Miracle-Gro, okay.
It is a protein that actively promotes neurogenesis, the actual growth of new brain cells, and repairs damaged neural pathways. By sweating intensely for just 20 minutes at 5 a.m., you are clearing out the stress hormone, flooding your system with motivation chemicals, and literally growing a stronger brain to handle the day's challenges. You are optimizing your health set immediately.
That brings us to 5:20 a.m. and the transition into the second pocket, reflect. So your heart rate is up, your brain is flooded with BDNF, and now you sit in absolute silence. From 5:20 to 5:40, you journal, you meditate, you pray, or you simply plan your day.
This is where you actively cultivate your heart set and your soul set. Remember the entrepreneur who was trying to outwork her trauma? This 20-minute block is where you process that emotional residue. You express gratitude. You release toxic emotions onto the pages of a journal so they aren't rattling around in your subconscious. And you connect with your deeper purpose before the chaos of the world invades your mind.
You are basically securing your emotional perimeter.
Yes.
And then from 5:4 to 6:00 a.m., you enter the final pocket, grow. This is dedicated to your mindset. This is where you read a chapter of a dense philosophical book, you listen to an educational podcast, or you study a masterclass in your specific industry.
You are feeding your biologically primed brain with high-value information.
Right. You have moved, you have reflected, and now you grow. At 6:00 a.m., you are a chemically and psychologically optimized human being, while your competitors are just hitting the snooze button for the 3rd time. But hold on. Let's stop the train here. Let's look at the mathematics of this. If I am forcing myself to wake up at 5 a.m. every single day to do burpees, write in a journal, and read Marcus Aurelius, well, doesn't that just mean I'm going to be completely sleep-deprived and miserable by 2 p.m.?
It's the most common objection.
It feels like borrowing energy from tomorrow to pay for today. You cannot life hack human biology to need less sleep. The math just doesn't work.
You are entirely correct, and it is the most crucial caveat in the entire text. Waking up at 5 a.m. is absolutely useless and biologically destructive without high-quality sleep. The 5 a.m. club is not a cult of sleep deprivation.
Goodness.
Sharma introduces the concept of the pre-sleep ritual to ensure you are securing deep rest.
Because if you just cut your sleep short, you miss out on that brain-shrinking biological cleaning process we talked about in the very beginning. Let's finally unpack that. How exactly does sleep clean the brain?
The mechanism is called the glymphatic system. During the day, as your brain consumes energy to think, process, and worry, it produces metabolic waste.
Okay.
Think of your brain during the day as a bustling, crowded city. As millions of people go about their business, trash naturally accumulates on the sidewalks. In your brain, this trash comes in the form of byproducts, including a protein called amyloid beta.
Which is the same protein heavily associated with Alzheimer's disease, right?
Exactly. Now, when you enter deep sleep, an incredible physical transformation occurs. The buildings in our city, your individual neurons physically shrink by up to 60%.
That is just wild to think about. The cells literally deflate.
They do. And by shrinking the buildings, the streets between them widen significantly. This allows cerebrospinal fluid to rush in like a fleet of high-powered street sweepers.
I love that analogy.
The fluid washes through the widened neural pathways, fleshing out the accumulated amyloid beta and metabolic toxins. If you are sleep deprived, the neurons don't shrink, the streets don't widen, and the street sweepers can't get in.
So the trash just piles up.
It piles up, and this is exactly what causes brain fog, poor emotional regulation, and cognitive decline.
So 5 a.m. is not about sleeping less. It is about shifting your schedule backward and fiercely protecting the architecture of your rest.
That's the key.
And Sharma points out that the biggest enemy of this process isn't necessarily our workload, it's our technology. He calls it the global sleep recession.
Because of blue light.
Right.
The screens on our phones and laptops emit blue light that perfectly mimics daylight. When that light hits your eyes at 10 p.m., it completely suppresses the pineal gland's production of melatonin, which is the hormone that induces sleep.
So if you were staring at a screen in bed, scrolling through Twitter or answering late emails, your brain chemically believes it is high noon.
Exactly. You aren't just delaying the time you fall asleep, you are ruining the biological depth of the sleep you eventually do get. The glymphatic system won't engage properly.
So the 5 a.m. method demands an evening curfew. You disconnect from technology at least an hour before bed, wind down, and get to sleep early enough to secure 7 to 8 hours of restorative rest before the 5 a.m. alarm strikes.
It's non-negotiable.
Okay, so the logic is bulletproof. The biology makes perfect sense. Go to bed early, wake up at 5 a.m., shrink the brain cells, flush the toxins, kill the cortisol, boost the BDNF. It's a perfect system.
On paper.
Yes, on paper, but human nature is incredibly stubborn. Knowing exactly what to do, the 20-20-20 formula, and actually dragging yourself out from under a warm, heavy blanket in a dark, cold room at 5 a.m. are two entirely different realities. How do we actually make this stick?
This is where we transition from theory to execution. Sharma outlines the habit installation protocol based on research from University College London. The fundamental rule is the 66-day minimum.
66 days.
Yes, it takes roughly 66 days to structurally wire in a new neural pathway to the point of automaticity.
And he breaks those 66 days down into 3 distinct 22-day fronts. Let's walk through them, because I feel like knowing what to expect emotionally is half the battle. Phase 1 is destruction, the first 22 days.
Destruction is precisely the right word. You are attempting to tear down an old, deeply entrenched neurological pathway.
Which is painful.
Very. Your biology is fundamentally lazy. It wants to maintain the status quo to conserve energy. When you introduce a shock to the system, like waking up 2 hours earlier than normal, your brain fights back with everything it has. You will feel exhausted, cranky, and resistant.
Building a new habit isn't like just flipping a light switch in your brain. It's more like trying to hack a new path through a dense, overgrown jungle with a dull machete.
That's a great way to look at it.
The first 22 days are exhausting because you are physically cutting through thick vines your old neural pathways. Every swing takes immense willpower.
That is an excellent analogy. And once you hack that initial rough trail, you enter phase 2, installation. Days 23 through 44. Sharma calls this the messy middle.
The messy middle. If the first phase was swinging the machete, the second phase is realizing you are covered in mud, lost in the jungle, and totally unsure if you are even going in the right direction. It just feels chaotic.
It really does.
And the billionaire mentor explicitly warns that most people quit during this phase. They experience the confusion and the fatigue, and they interpret that discomfort as a sign that the habit isn't working, or that they simply aren't morning people.
And that is the tragic misconception. What Sharma masterfully points out is that the psychological discomfort isn't a sign of failure. It is the biological proof that neuroplasticity is actively happening.
Oh, I like that.
Your brain is physically rewiring its circuitry. It takes immense metabolic energy. You have to normalize the pain of starting. As the billionaire's mantra goes, all change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. The blisters on your hands from swinging that machete are proof that the path is being cleared.
And if you can just survive that messy middle, you reach phase 3, integration, the final 22 days. This is where the jungle path has been trampled down into a clear dirt road, and eventually a paved highway. You reach the automaticity point.
The holy grail of habit formation. This is the inflection point where it actually requires more conscious willpower to skip the 5 a.m. routine and stay in bed than it does to just get up and do it.
Which sounds impossible on day one, but it happens.
It does. The habit has been delegated from the conscious, effortful part of your brain to the basal ganglia, the automated habit center.
To help survive that initial brutal destruction phase, the eccentric billionaire shares some practical and honestly hilarious tactics. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but he admits that when he was first building the 5 a.m. habit, he literally slept in his workout clothes.
Yes, shoes and all.
He would lay his running shoes right next to the bed.
It sounds absurd for a billionaire to sleep in sweatpants, but the underlying psychological logic is flawless. He is aggressively eliminating decision fatigue.
Right. When the alarm goes off at 5 a.m., your prefrontal cortex is offline. You are groggy. If you have to turn on a light, open a closet, decide whether you want to wear shorts or leggings, find your socks, and locate your shoes. Well, every single one of those micro decisions is an opportunity for your brain to say, this is too hard, let's just go back to sleep.
Exactly.
By sleeping in the clothes, the decision is already made. You just roll out of bed and stumble toward the door before your rational mind can invent an excuse.
Sharma also notes 3 core values that are essential during this 66-day protocol. First, don't attempt it in isolation.
You need a group.
Willpower is highly contagious. This is why the concept of a 5 a.m. club is so effective. Finding an accountability partner or a group ensures you pull each other through the messy middle.
What's the second one?
Second, the teacher learns the most. By explaining the 20-20-20 formula to a spouse or a colleague, you encode the philosophy deeper into your own neurology.
I've definitely found that to be true.
And third, you must deeply internalize that the exact moment when you most feel like quitting is the precise moment you must continue advancing. The desire to quit is the signal that the old pathway is finally dying.
Okay, let's fast forward. Let's say the listener does it. They suffer through the 66 days, they hack through the jungle, they survive the messy middle. The 5 a.m. habit is fully integrated.
They've arrived.
They own the morning. They're doing the burpees, they're journaling, they're reading. But what happens at 8 a.m.?
Reality hits.
Exactly. The second they arrive at the office, they're bombarded by 50 urgent emails, a sudden crisis meeting, and 3 people needing their immediate attention.
Yeah.
How does this pristine, optimized morning mindset survive contact with a chaotic, demanding reality? How do you protect the momentum for the other 23 hours of the day?
This is the critical transition from personal mastery to professional execution. Sharma provides a framework called the 10 Tactics of Lifelong Genius. We don't have time to dissect all 10 in microscopic detail, but several of them fundamentally redefine how we work. To survive that 8 a.m. bombardment, you have to establish what he calls the tight bubble of total focus.
The TBTF. It sounds like a sci-fi force field.
It effectively is. It is a metaphorical moat that you aggressively construct around your assets of genius. Elite performers do not leave their focus exposed to the whims of the office.
So what does constructing the bubble actually look like?
It means physically isolating yourself during key hours. It means turning off every single non-essential notification on your devices. It means setting boundaries with energy vampires, people who drain your cognitive bandwidth with trivial complaints.
You cannot execute a granular F1 level pit stop if you let random spectators wander onto the track.
Exactly. And once you are inside that tight bubble of total focus, you execute the 90901 rule.
The 90901 rule. What is that?
For the next 90 days, you dedicate the first 90 minutes of your workday entirely to one single game-changing project.
No email, no Slack, just quickly checking the news. Pure, unadulterated, deep work on the single biggest opportunity in your career.
Because the first 90 minutes of your workday are when your cognitive energy is highest. your willpower tank is full, and your transient hypofrontality from the morning routine is still yielding creative dividends.
But most people squander that time.
They absolutely do. Most people spend their best 90 minutes doing low-value administrative sorting, checking emails, responding to trivial messages. They give their genius to shallow work and save whatever exhausted scraps of attention are left in the afternoon for the most important projects. The 90901 rule flips that. You pay yourself first.
Okay, but nobody can sustain that level of intense focus indefinitely. Even if you crush the first 90 minutes, you still have the rest of the day. How do you maintain energy without burning out?
This introduces the 60-10 method, which ties directly into the overarching philosophy of the twin cycles of elite performance.
The twin cycle.
Yes. The old industrial age model of linear productivity, the idea that you sit at a desk for 8 uninterrupted hours and just grind harder to produce more, is biologically flawed.
Right.
The human brain is not a computer processor. It is biological tissue. It fatigues. Linear productivity inevitably leads to burnout, mistakes, and a dilution of your cognitive bandwidth.
So what is the alternative to linear productivity?
Pulsation. True masters operate in cycles. They oscillate aggressively between a high excellence cycle where they are sprinting in deep, uninterrupted focus and a deep recovery cycle where they are actively resting.
So how does the 60-10 method fit in?
The 60-10 method dictates that you work with ferocious, uninterrupted intensity for 60 minutes, and then you completely and unapologetically detach and recover for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Step away from the screen, you go for a walk, you listen to music, or you just sit in silence.
You don't spend that 10 minutes checking Instagram. That's not recovery. That's just a different screen.
Exactly. True recovery requires detaching the visual and cognitive systems from stimulation. And this concept of recovery extends far beyond just 10-minute breaks. It dictates how you structure your entire week. Which brings us to the 2 massage protocol.
Yes. I read this tactic and I immediately laughed. The billionaire mentor suggests getting 2 deep tissue massages every single week to recover your physical and mental energy.
It sounds a bit out of reach for most.
Right. I thought, well, of course a billionaire is suggesting that. That sounds like a lovely luxury reserved for the ultra-wealthy. How on earth is an everyday listener managing a mortgage and kids supposed to apply 2 massages a week practically?
It's the perfect pushback, but it requires looking past the literal example to understand the underlying biological mechanism. The mechanism is supercompensation.
Let's break that down. Supercompensation.
Think about how a muscle grows in the gym. When you are lifting heavy weights, you are not actually building muscle. The lifting process is catabolic. It creates micro tears in the muscle fibers. It floods the tissue with lactic acid. You leave the gym weaker than when you entered.
So the workout is the destruction phase.
Yes. The muscle grows, adapts, and becomes stronger only during the period of deep rest and protein synthesis that follows. That adaptation is supercompensation. If you just lift weights continuously without resting, the muscle tears completely and you suffer a severe injury.
You burn out.
Exactly. The exact same biological rule applies to your cognitive and creative assets. When you are executing the 90901 rule, or operating in the tight bubble of total focus, you are creating micro tears in your cognitive bandwidth. You are depleting your neurotransmitters. Your genius only grows and solidifies during the deep recovery cycle.
So if 2 deep tissue massages a week aren't financially or logistically feasible, the underlying lesson remains the same. You must aggressively schedule deep physical and mental recovery.
You have to treat rest as a non-negotiable strategic priority, not as a guilty afterthought once all the real work is finally done.
Yeah.
Whether that recovery is a long walk in the woods without your phone, a dedicated hour of reading fiction, or simply taking a nap on a Sunday afternoon, it must be planned and protected with the same ferocity as your most important business meeting. Rest is not a reward for the work. It is a prerequisite for the next cycle of excellence.
That is a massive paradigm shift.
Right.
Rest is a prerequisite, not a reward. And I think that perfectly summarizes the entire journey we've taken today. When you first hear about the 5 a.m. club, it sounds like a rigid punishment.
It really does.
It sounds like a cult of sleep deprivation where you wake up early just so you can suffer through more emails and outgrind your competition.
But as we've seen, it is the exact opposite.
Right. It is a meticulously designed, deeply empathetic biological and psychological framework. It's about reclaiming your potential from a superficial, distracted world. By understanding transient hypofrontality, mastering the 20-20-20 formula, respecting the brutal reality of the 66-day habit cycle, and balancing intense, focused work with profound restorative recovery, you aren't just becoming more productive.
No, it goes much deeper than that.
You are creating a gargantuan competitive advantage while simultaneously protecting your emotional and spiritual well-being.
You are building a sustainable architecture for your life rather than just running on a treadmill of stress until you collapse.
Think about this for yourself as you go into your day tomorrow. Whether you are prepping for a massive board meeting, trying to lead a team through a volatile crisis, or honestly, just trying to find a pocket of silence and peace in a day that feels like it's constantly spinning out of control, protecting your first hour, is the ultimate act of self-respect.
Truly.
You are paying yourself first. You are optimizing your neurochemistry, your emotionality, and your physiology before the world can demand a single ounce of your attention.
It comes down to intent and execution. So I will leave you with this final thought to mull over. You now understand the biology. You understand the twin cycles of performance. If you were to construct your tight bubble of total focus and apply the 9901 rule starting tomorrow morning, what is the single granular project you would focus your first 90 minutes on that would completely alter the trajectory of your life?
That is the ultimate question. We've given you the biological blueprints, we've shown you how to clear the metabolic waste, hack through the jungle blade habits, and unlock the transient hypofrontality waiting for you in the dark. The chaotic, superficial orchestra of the modern world doesn't have to dictate your rhythm. It's time to set your alarm, claim your victory hour, and finally orchestrate the masterpiece you were built to create.